Welcome to Galcom's Mission Compass podcast. To learn more about Galcom and our guests today, visit galcom.org.
He was on his knees in tears when we handed him the radio. And even just talking about it now, I get emotional thinking about it,
Hello, friend. We're glad you're here today to join us on Galcom's Mission Compass, your guide to the Great Commission. I'm Ron Harris. What does it take to be a missionary today? Well, it may take someone just like you, with the unique skills and abilities God gave you to do your part in the Great Commission. And here's your host, Galcom's Tim Whitehead, to tell you more.
Well, thank you, Ron, and friends. Before we get to our special guest, just a quick update here at Galcom. In 2023, after a couple-year absence, we are going to be going on short-term mission trips again, building radio stations, repairing radio stations, handing out our solar-powered fixed-tune radios. And you might say, I don't know if I'm qualified. Well, Byron Miller, all the way from Miramichi, New Brunswick, is here with us in studio, in our Hamilton studio, and that's a whole other story, who recently went on a trip to Bolivia with our friends at Pioneers. Byron, thank you so much for joining us here on the Mission Compass.
Thanks for having me here, Tim. It's good to be here.
So what made you decide to go all the way down to Bolivia, spend a week out in the Andes up where it's cold and you can barely breathe, to hand out solar radios?
Well, I had known Alex Muir, who was leading this team, for about 6 years prior, and he had indicated that he had a spot open, and I had always, I've been a Christian for only about 7 years, and I had always kind of admired what he was doing and thought it was a really interesting thing to be doing, and maybe at the same time just felt, maybe I'm not really qualified to go because I'm a new believer, and so I never really brought it up, but it just happened to come up in conversation there last March or so that, I might be looking for someone in October, and would you be interested in going? So I jumped on the opportunity.
Very good. What was the highlight of the trip for you?
That's tough. No, it doesn't really answer your question to say everything was a highlight, but there was just so many good things about it. The radios, for one, giving those radios out, you could really see how much they meant to people like that. It was a big deal for them to get a radio. And one man, I remember he had been, because we would get to these communities usually the night before. So the evening before, this particular gentleman had been kind of clowning around with everybody. And although we don't speak the same language, you could tell he had a good sense of humor and he's laughing. And the same guy the next day, he was on his knees in tears when we handed him the radio. And even just talking about it now, I get emotional thinking about it, So definitely things like that were highlights of the trip, yeah. But even just the working with the team, we did some children's ministry while we were there and some other ministries. And just every day was a blessing and just something new to learn and grow from. And
I think we take for granted we have so much here in the West. I mean, if you're listening to us right now, you have a radio, you probably have a smartphone, and so on and so on. The Quechua that we're serving up in the Andes, most of them will not have electricity in their homes. There won't be running water. This radio is a precious thing. They're probably non-literate, so giving them a printed Bible, they couldn't engage with it. So this is a special tool, which is actually why you're here all the way from Miramichi, New Brunswick to our office in Hamilton, because these are so precious. Some of our radios, they break. Now, we do everything we can to make them as durable as possible, but they have several dozens of radios that people have come back to the radio station with and said, my radio won't work anymore. Can you fix it? Mm-hmm. And so you're here training to learn some troubleshooting, to go back to train our partners in Bolivia to say, okay, here's some of the common things going wrong. And just to give everyone an idea of just how precious these radios are, one of the radios you brought back was at least 15, 16 years old. Because when we opened it up, I looked at the inside and said, we haven't made them that way in a long time, but they hang on them. They are so precious.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about the friend that you met down in Bolivia that's repairing radios.
Yeah, well, his name is Ireneo Lopez, and he's a volunteer technician at the radio station, Mosakchaski in Cochabamba. And, talk about God, how he works. And I think typically if I had have gone on a typical mission trip with Alex, I might not have visited Cochabamba. But this trip was a little different, and I had that opportunity to go and see that radio station and to meet Mr. Lopez. And he's not just taking care of fixing radios. He has a whole transformers and antennas and transmitters, and he's...
It's a big radio station, yeah.
Looking at all of that stuff. But in his little workshop there, he had a box full of radios that people had brought in. And as it happened, I thought, wow, that's something to bring in a radio from, because the countryside.
Oh, this is days of walks.
Oh,
Absolutely,
yeah, into the city. As it happened, when our group was there visiting the radio station, that same day, we saw a lady come in with a broken radio. So, it really drove the point home. But he had a workbench there, and I could see he had some hand-drawn electrical schematics where he was trying to figure out how the circuits went. Boy, it just really piqued my interest and moved my heart a little bit. Just what I do for a living, I do electrical troubleshooting, and I train people how to do it, not on radios, but on diesel electric freight locomotives. So this is a little
size,
a little smaller scale here, but I thought, boy, if I could just hook up with Galcom, learn a few things about fixing these and come back, maybe I could help them out a little bit. And you guys have been just so on board with that idea. It's really terrific. The welcome I've received here and the information that's been imparted to me of, tips and tricks and what to look for and how to fix things. And it's been really great. So I'm just overjoyed, and I'm sure we're going to be able to really help out the radio station down there, and Senor Lopez in particular.
I see God's hand of providence all over this. Alex Muir has taken over 50 teams to Bolivia to hand out radios, over 60,000 radios now.
Yeah.
And very rarely do they go into the cities. Cochabamba, Sucre, it's always way up. So the fact that this is one of the few teams that ever went to visit the station.
Right, yeah.
And here you are with the right training and abilities to go then see the issue, and now you've come to us to train. You're going to go back there and do some training.
Yeah.
So, friends, here's the point of the story. God has a plan for your life to serve him in missions. He's given you an education, training, experiences. He just wants you to say yes and serve him. Byron, you're a perfect example. You just went with the skills you had in your hand and said yes to God. We're thrilled that you're going to go back and we're going to be able to redeem all these radios that our donors have given towards, our volunteers have made. And you got to see some of these radios. They're caked with dirt. They're scuffed and scarred. I mean, these are well used, well loved. And so it's not surprising that they're beat up a bit.
Yeah.
But Byron, we just pray God's blessing on you as you head back to Bolivia and to redeem all these radios, get them back into people's hands,
Amen.
Preaching the gospel.
Thank you.
There's a mysterious longing that consciously or unconsciously we all try to fill, sometimes at great cost. I'm Bonnie Sala with Reset. The woman in the burn unit was eager to talk to the chaplain who came by to visit her. She had intentionally set herself on fire and then called emergency services. "Listen," the woman said, "I need you to believe me. I'm not crazy. I didn't want to kill myself. I just wanted to be closer to God." As Chaplain Emily Boring walked with the woman in her lengthy healing journey, Boring realized that her own struggle with eating disorders was the same painful cry for connection. Boring writes, "Here's what I've come to believe. Beneath every self-destructive human behavior is the desire for connection. The behavior is distorted, but the desire is sound. And here's what fascinates me. Beneath our longing for connection is also the belief that connection is possible, even when our actions seem to say otherwise." The Bible book of Ecclesiastes names this longing for connection, saying God has also planted eternity, a sense of divine purpose in the human heart, a mysterious longing which nothing under the sun can satisfy except God. The book of Acts, chapter 17, tells that God created us so that we would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. Is that desire for connection and meaning unfulfilled in your life? This is what God says to you today. If you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me. I'm Bonnie Sala with Reset. To hear this again, read or share this, or to find more resources like this, visit guidelines.org.
Well, it is the beginning of a new year. We want to make 2023 the year of telling God's story. To help us do that, Stan Jeter, founder, director of Global News Alliance, GNA.news. Stan has been joining us once a month, sharing what God is doing around the world. Stan, welcome back to the Mission Compass. What have you got for us this time?
I just got back from Guatemala in Central America, and I've got to tell you, that was an amazing experience. This was for a meeting of communicators and ministry leaders. And, well, Galcom had a representative there.
We were there, Al Wyatt, yep.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I met Al, and we had a good conversation. The meeting place in itself is what I want to tell you about today. So we went to this place that I'm telling you about. It's called Hope of Life in Guatemala. It's a locally grown ministry that God has blessed so amazingly that they've got a hospital, they've got an old folks home, they've got schools, they host missions groups that are coming all the time. They do so many things. And the story I want to tell you is about how they have a hospital for children, and they go out into the hills nearby and rescue children who are malnourished, and some of them actually on the point of death. And it's a very serious issue. They bring them back by ambulance. They treat them in the hospital. And I went along on one of those trips, and we filmed a little bit there. We're going to tell a full story on Global News Alliance shortly. So here's a nurse talking about what they're doing on location. We're in a little hut in the middle of nowhere. There's a family gathered around with several children. And here's what the missionary nurse says.
We are here to bring twins Odelia and Lydia back for a medical rescue. 5 years ago, we actually arrived to this very house and brought these twin girls in for nutritional recuperation when they were severely malnourished as babies. They've since returned home and have lately fallen back into a severe state of malnutrition. The mother actually has another baby who was a twin. The other twin previously passed away from malnutrition just a couple months ago, and the current baby is also in a severe state of malnutrition. So we will be bringing him in as well.
That's the environment that we were in. We brought those kids, walked them down the mountain and to the ambulance that was waiting below, and took them about an hour and a half to the hospital at Hope of Life, where they were seen by nurses. And then the whole process starts, where they prescribe a special diet, because you can't just give malnourished children anything to revive their body. You know, you've got to give them a special diet. So they do that. And they've done that for hundreds of children. It's truly amazing. It's an amazing experience and an amazing ministry. And I want to tell you this about the ministry. The whole thing, which is at this point, is a multi-million-dollar operation. And they have wealthy donors that come down from Canada, the United States, participate in the activities there. And they'll do things like build another building, like a workshop to train people in carpentry, or they just do so many things. The whole thing was founded by a Guatemalan guy named Carlos Vargas. Carlos grew up in absolute poverty. He didn't have shoes until he was 9 years old. He didn't finish more than the second grade of school. He came to the U.S., did well here, and he found the Lord. He became a Christian. And then he got terribly sick. He went down to Guatemala. And in the hospital in Guatemala, he saw old folks that had been kicked out of their homes because their families couldn't afford to feed them anymore. And so he decided to do something, and he bought a little land. He created a home for elderly people. And then the ministry grew from there to what I was describing a moment ago. I think it's an amazing story. You start with a small dream in impossible circumstances, but if you dream big dreams, the dreams get bigger as you go.
And the key, too, is when God's in it.
When God's in it.
You know, when you're doing something that God wants you, he's showing love and kindness and compassion to others. Of course, God's going to bless that. And we want our friends listening to do the same. So, Stan, I guess you would have filmed this story on your smartphone, as you've been telling us. And if friends, if you want to see the whole story, it'll be up on GNA.news. There's a whole bunch of stories there of what God is doing around the world. We want you to participate telling God's story. Stan, do you have a tip for us to kick off our new year on how we can be sharing God's story with the tools that we have in our hands, our smartphones?
Absolutely. It's sort of like Moses. God says, what do you have in your hand? And he says, a rod. Well, what do we have in our hands? We've got something even better. We've got these amazing smartphones. Here's the tip. when you approach a situation like we were in that hut with these family, kids running around and the nurse and everything, there are 3 shots that you want to make sure you get: wide, medium, and detail. So back up, get an establishing shot so that people can see the context. Just hold it there, show what's going on, but from a complete wide shot. And then move in a little bit, get a medium shot, maybe a group of people. In this case, I got the whole shack. And then I moved in and I got the nurse putting a little measuring tape around the arms of these little twins. And then a little bit closer, and you show the detail, the hand putting the measuring tape around the arms. So 3 basic shots. You remember weapons of mass? No. Remember W&D, wide, medium, and detail.
Friends, if you tune in regularly here on Mission Compass, you're going to be a pro with all these great tips, because we want to tell God's story while God is doing wonderful things around the world. We want to share with people. And this is a tragic situation, but people need to know about it so we can participate in being the solution. Stan, love what you're doing. Really appreciate you joining us every month here on the Mission Compass.
Thank you.
You may be listening to us on your computer, but you can also find us on your smartphone using Spotify, iTunes, or other streaming platforms. Just go to galcom.org and choose your favorite. Make sure to subscribe, follow, and share our podcast.
Well, friends, as we continue here on the Mission Compass, I am very glad to be joined by Charlotte Martin, Global Missions Director of Power to Change Students. Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us here on the Mission Compass.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.
Now, I often get challenged. We have 3 kind of ministry focuses here at Galcom. We make our radios and send them around the world. We build radio stations, and we go on mission trips, short-term mission trips, handing out the radios, doing evangelism. And we get the pushback. Oh, it would be better to just send those pastors money. You're wasting all this money on flights and so on. And I say, you don't understand. There's so many benefits to short-term missions, and that's what we want to talk about today with P2C students. You arrange short-term mission trips. So tell us, first of all, why?
Yeah, great question. So I think as we go to different places, our heart for the world grows, and God's heart is for the world. So our heart becomes more like Christ's heart, and we learn more about ourselves and God's plan for our lives. And mission trips are just great little spiritual growth environments that help you develop spiritually, personally, in your relationships, in leadership. And there's lots of ways we can be partnering globally, but I do think there is value in sending people on mission trips.
And everything you said in that kind of quote that you were told first was all about the person going. You didn't say anything about the person we were going to serve or to reach or to do whatever. And I agree. There's so much in our personal discipleship walk that a trip doing evangelism, sharing our faith, it just grows that muscle in us that often atrophies when we're sitting in our church pew.
Yes, for sure. And I think it is 2 ways as well. I think people are impacted when we go, and I think they learn more about God and who He is and His power as well. And hopefully they hear the message of the gospel if we have the opportunity to share it where we're going.
And the third benefit, so there's the benefit to the person going, the person that we're doing the work to or reaching out to, but also that local pastor or missionary. I often say, hey, if I was sick in the hospital, or if you were sick in the hospital, what would you prefer, me to send you a card or to come and visit?
Right.
And that coming alongside someone who's in a difficult situation, struggling along to serve God, and you come with a group of people from Canada just to say, we love you, we value what you're doing. It's hard to measure that impact when you guys come alongside somebody.
Exactly. Yes. It encourages and inspires those people, our local partners.
So there's all the reasons to go. Friends, sign up now at Power to Change Students. No, wait a minute. We got one more thing. Charlotte, explain a little bit about your global missions project and then where you're actually headed to this coming summer.
So we say summer, but technically it's spring. So we send our mission trips in May and June when university and college students often have a break. So we have 5 different mission trips that are happening this year. Most of our mission trips are between 4 to 5 weeks. So they are short-term mission trips, but they're maybe not as short as what people would typically think a mission trip is. And we have some locations. We have 3 trips that are actually in Canada, and we have 2 international trips.
And what would be the purpose of the trips? I know like sometimes you go down, you're building construction work for a church or something. What's the focus of the trips?
Yeah, so our 2 international trips are actually focused on student ministry. So we partner with local ministries that are doing student ministry. 2 of our Canadian trips, they have a focus on urban ministry. So they're in different cities in Canada, focused on urban ministry and really combining spiritual formation, personal development, and missional practice. And then our other mission trip in Canada is focused on international students.
So, Power to Change, if you don't know, used to be called Campus Crusade.
Right.
This is for young adults. So the people that you're looking to come with you are students.
Yep. So university, college students, if you're student aged, but you're not going to university or college, we welcome you to consider it and join us as well.
And I think this is a perfect age to do it in. I mean,
for sure.
If you've grown up in the church and you've not done something like this, go just test it out for yourself. Exercise your personal faith. Step outside of your parents' faith. If you're new as a believer and you've maybe gone to a PDC campus event, you've become a Christian, go tell someone about what you believe now. That's the best way. Don't just sit there and say, oh, no, I'm saved. Phew. No, go and tell the next person down the line. So tell us more about some real specifics here, Charlotte. Dates, places, activities. Take us through the list here and tell us more about it.
We have our 2 Praxis mission trips. So we're going to have a Praxis mission trip in Edmonton and Ottawa. Again, they're going to be 4 to 5 weeks long, and they are going to be focused on different ministries that are serving locally in those cities. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a chance to do different spiritual formation activities with the group of students who are on the mission trip. You'll process what you're learning in community, and as well as you'll be living what's called a rule of life on the mission trip with everyone. You'll be experiencing the different urban ministry partnerships that we have set up. And as well, there'll be lots of different personal development times and opportunities as well.
Rule of life. Isn't that Dietrich Bonhoeffer's, what he set up in Germany?
Yes.
Good stuff. Serious discipleship stuff there.
Exactly. Yeah. We really think that our doing needs to flow out of our being. All of our trips focus on that, but this one is definitely intentional, or these 2, Edmonton and Ottawa, are definitely focused on our doing flowing out of our being.
Okay, and then you have Nations Next Door.
Yes. So we know that the nations come to Canada, and Power to Change Students has a strong international student ministry. So last year, we had a group of about 7 people on this mission trip who met over 200 international students.
Wow.
This mission trip is happening this year in the city of Saskatoon. And so it's really focused on intentionally serving international students, practically, relationally, and spiritually. And sometimes when I think of the loneliness that international students face, I get so sad because being an international student can be so lonely. And this mission trip is designed to create relationships and community with international students and point them to Jesus in the process.
And then there's opportunities. There's 2 different international opportunities. One looks like it's a bit of a code word here. I love the secret stuff, the kind of the creative access countries. So tell us as carefully as you can, what are our global opportunities?
We have a mission trip going to, we call it our Desert Rain mission trip. So that mission trip focuses on the Arab world. And we've had this partnership for over 20 years, and it's a highly relational ministry. So you get to make genuine friendships with local students, and we minister through hospitality and engaging cross-culturally with university and college students in DR.
And the other international trip?
So Vietnam, again, we partner with the local campuses. In Vietnam, we have the opportunity to encourage the local Christian students. And then we also have the opportunity to share about Jesus with those who have never heard. So we're doing things like running English groups, we're hosting picnics, we're playing soccer, we're engaging in spiritual conversations as we develop relationships with students.
p2c.sh/missions. When do people need to get registered by?
So the application deadline is January 31st. So you need to have your application and your references submitted by that time.
So friends, as soon as the program is done and we sign off, turn off your radio and pray. Say, God, is this what you want me to do? And we believe strongly here in the Mission Compass, everyone has a part to play in missions, but it's the big step is a hard one to take. So take a smaller step. Take a 4 to 5 week step here. let God work in you. Charlotte, a lot of our conversation has all been about that discipleship work in our own hearts,
Yes.
not necessarily the work that we're doing.
Definitely. We are so blessed as the goers when we go on mission trips.
God promises his word will not return void. So you go, God will take care of that part, but you need to go and grow in your ministry, grow in your own discipleship. p2c.sh/missions. Charlotte, great to have you with us today.
Well, friend, we're at the end of our program today, and you've been listening to Galcom's Mission Compass, your guide to the Great Commission. There are many ways to partner with us. To find out more, visit our website at galcom.org. That's Galcom, spelled GALCOM.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I'm Ron Harris. Thanks for joining us today on Mission Compass, a radio ministry of Galcom International.
If you enjoyed this podcast, we upload a new episode every Monday. You can also find us on the radio or other streaming platforms. We have a list on our website. Make sure to subscribe, follow, and share our podcast. Please rate this episode and leave a review. We would love to hear back from you. And we also want to know where you're listening from. So click Mission Compass on our website, tell us, and we'll send you Galcom's devotional, 30 Days of Faith.